I'm going to do that. So if that's all right with that, everybody? Does anybody have a problem with that? Okay. All right. So welcome to our virtual outing called More Nature Finds Near Home. Today we're going to visit 4 different locations in Prince George's County, each of which is special in its own way. And I'm hoping that everybody here will also chime in when they have suggestions about other places that you know that other people might enjoy. So I'm going to share my screen, and this screen will get us going on some pictures. We always like to have pictures. Okay, so the agenda includes Watkins Regional Park, which is, and we're going to go around, talk about the Loop Trail, which is a fully accessible trail with lots of different kinds of people who use it. And then we're going to go to the Governor Bridge Natural Area, where nature is regenerating. And then we're going to go to the Cheltenham Wetland Park, which nobody knows about. I just discovered it recently. And then the Greenbelt Forest Preserve, which is being threatened by a major infrastructure project. So this is an interesting little bunch of places that people can enjoy when they need a dose of nature. So let's start out with just finding out who's with us today. If we could, let's just go around and each say, who are we? Where are we at the moment? And maybe a sentence about your favorite way to spend a Saturday afternoon. So let's see. I'm just going to call you out so we don't all trip over each other's voice things. Sydney.
Okay, I'm in Adelphi, Maryland right now, just about 2 blocks inside the Beltway off Riggs Road. Favorite way to spend a Saturday afternoon? Well, I think there's a favorite way, and there's the way that I usually do. Let's see. Well, my favorite way would probably be to go birding or do something outdoors, but I haven't been doing that as much lately.
Okay.
Or reading, or if it's raining, maybe reading either a good book or just catching up on some current event stuff.
Okay. Who's next? Janice.
Well, let's see. I live in College Park, and when it's not hot, I like to be outside gardening or doing something like birding or walking or something. Right now, I have an aversion to mosquitoes. So, you know, it's like right now my garden, which is a jungle, a true jungle, but full of monarchs and swallowtails and bugs and birds. I mean, it's a little tiny, it's an area, you know, like, and it's just amazing how many critters and flying lovelies are out there. But anyway, so that's my story.
Okay. Kathleen.
I live in Montgomery Village, which is right next to Gaithersburg. So I'm not sure how I got on your list, but I'm glad I did. Let's see, I retired 4 years ago, so every day is a Saturday to me, which is a really nice thing. I like to look at birds. I have a couple of bird feeders in my backyard. Try to go for a couple of walks every day. And then I try to be in nature as often as I can. One exciting thing that happened recently is my youngest brother and his wife are avid birders. And they told me about an anhinga, a female anhinga, that was found, that was seen about 1.5 miles from my house. So I went up to that little lake, and he said, just look for the birders. And there were like 10 people there. So I got to see it through a spotting scope. And she had her wings out, you know, spread out to dry. It was so exciting. was really neat.
She lost. Usually they're in Florida or somewhere.
She was there the other day. So he said some of the tropical birds are coming farther and farther north because of climate change. But it was in our local lake with a couple of cormorants, and they were all squabbling with each other. It was really fun to watch.
What's the name of the lake where the Anhinga is?
It was first spotted at a little man-made lake behind a building
Oh,
near 270. And now it's down at Lake Whetstone, which is on Montgomery Village Avenue.
okay.
That's pretty cool. Lots of great blue herons down there too, which I absolutely love.
I love too. That's nice that you say that. We have another house in Crownsville, and there's a community beach. And I had my little float the other day out there, and I was floating around, and right in front of me came a great blue heron. He just
wow.
was like 2 feet away. It's just great. And I see him a lot across in the little cove across from our house, but there's nothing like being in the water, on the water, and having him like right there. And you're thinking,
Oh, that's so exciting.
look a lot bigger this
Yeah, wow.
this direction. So that was
Okay, Mary Gant.
Oh, hi. I live in Bethesda, just north of NIH, and retired from the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences 5 years ago. And I just suppose, given the heat of summer, I'm mostly indoors in the afternoons, but I try to walk when it's not just impossibly hot. So yesterday, I went out to Seneca Creek State Park, which is in the Gaithersburg area off of 270, and walked around the lake. And it was really pleasant. It was just wonderful to be out in the woods. And before it got to be really hot, I was walking usually about 6 miles in Rock Creek Park. I can get into the park from my house. It's about a half-mile walk. And I really enjoyed it. On one occasion, I saw a big, I think it was a blue heron or a tricolor heron. I couldn't get a good enough look. It was too far away in Rock Creek Park. And I figure it's not going to stay there because there's not much in the way to eat in that part of Rock Creek. In fact, I began to look for fish in Rock Creek, thinking, well, why are there no frogs or fish or turtles? And I finally saw a couple of groups of 3 or 4 small minnow-sized fish in the creek. And I've yet to see a turtle in that part of Rock Creek, and I've yet to hear a frog or see a frog.
Well, I hope we're going to give you some of those little treats today, even if it's
Great.
virtual.
Well, and I really do enjoy being outdoors. And I've traveled a lot out west. Home was New Mexico, and I have ranching family in Idaho and New Mexico. But I decided I just don't know my own Montgomery County. And so with the COVID lockdown, I've been making little trips around just to walk and see what's there.
Great. We have another MG, Mary Gordon.
Yes, hello. My name's Mary Gordon, and I reside in Upper Marlboro. And currently I am here in Upper Marlboro. My favorite way to spend Saturdays is usually to go out and find new areas, new places. I've just started birding. And like Mary, the other Mary noted, I also enjoy kind of finding new spots. Here in my community, we actually have a pond, and there are a number of green herrings there. And actually, I think some of them just had little herrings because there seem to be about 4 or 5 if I go early enough, if I get up early enough and look. And so that's been real neat to see. That's kind of my go-to spot if I can't get too far out, if I have to work or something. But I've looked at a number of places in the area to try to find birds, and I like taking pictures as well. I'm actually about 5 minutes drive from Watkins Park. So I'm looking forward to what you have to share about Watkins Park, because there's still stuff that I'm learning about them. And out of the other
Great.
And out of the other
Thanks.
3, I think there's a couple that I'll learn more about. So I'm looking forward to hearing today's webinar.
Super. I just need to know what community are you in where you have those green herons? I want to know. So
In Perrywood.
it's
If you,
Perrywood?
yeah, if you know where Perrywood, if you
Yeah,
come,
Perrywood's like, hey, we're neighbors. I live in Kettering. I'm like over there on Whiteholm Drive, right sort of behind the Safeway. Anyway,
oh yeah, because
we're
I heard about
neighbors.
this from next door, so it's all the same communities. Is probably why. But if you come in from the Oak Grove entrance, right
Yeah,
across from the new development,
yeah.
it's kind of hidden. So
Uh-huh.
I guess I should say I want to share, but I don't want to share because I love the spot. But if you go behind the gazebo, you'll see there's a little trail, and
Great, I know where that is. I
yeah, and
walk there sometimes. I always
it looks a
sometimes
little
feel like
scary.
I wonder whether those people mind that I'm walking there because I don't
Oh no, it's
belong. But
paved. It's paved and it's part of it's meant to be an open space
yeah,
for everyone. It's yeah,
okay, great.
but there's quite a few of them there now.
Okay. All right, let's see. Who haven't we heard from yet? Lily. Lily, are you there?
Yes, what am I supposed to say?
You're supposed to say your name, where you are at the moment, and your favorite way to spend a Saturday afternoon.
So my name is Lily Fountain. I live in College Park, and my favorite way to spend an afternoon is either walking or biking my local trails in College Park, which would be the Paint Branch Trail and Lake Artemisia, and like when we got a lot of time to get beyond that into, deeper into the Anacostia watershed network of bike trails, walking, hiking, biking trails.
Cool. How about Catherine? Catherine, you need to unmute.
Yes, unmute. I'm sorry, I'm catching up. I'm just back, so I should even change my background so I'm not at work. For some reason, it's not showing up. So I'm going to pretend to be at work, but I'm not. So I'm Catherine Plaisant, and I live in Greenbelt. And actually, my story goes pretty much like Lily, in the sense we do spend a lot of time hiking, walking, bicycling in the area. Especially now with the pandemic where we've been staying home a lot more. And I could add, the pandemic has had a detrimental effect on the invasive right next to me because there was more time to go and pull a lot of things that were not nice to look at. So that was a good thing to do on Saturdays.
Great. Okay. Well, let's move along to what we're going to be talking about here. One of the things that we've started doing recently in Sierra Club land is acknowledging the people who used to live in the places where we live or some of these places that we use. And anyway, I traditionally start my outings talking about the watershed that we're in. And I just thought we would just spend a moment to combine those two things because our watershed are named after our native peoples. So today we're going to be looking at 4 different places, all in Prince George's County. For those of you who are not from this little piece of land here, here's our county. This particular map is from a watershed map that has this, it's a remarkable multi-layered GIS kind of magical thing that you can point at where you are and figure out what stream bed that is. But anyway, we're gonna check out this Greenbelt Forest Preserve, which is part of the Anacostia watershed. The water there runs into Beaver Dam Creek, and then, oh, wait, I'm sorry, where am I? Yeah, right about, yeah, anyway, Beaver Dam Creek, and then into the Anacostia. Then we're going to be over in Bowie at the Governor Bridge Natural Area, which is part of the Patuxent watershed. And that the water there goes right into, I mean, we're actually right up against the Patuxent River, which forms the boundary between Prince George's and Anne Arundel County. Then we're going to be in Watkins Park, which is also in the Patuxent watershed, which, but where that's at the western branch of the Patuxent. And then Cheltenham Wetlands Park, which is right near the headwaters of the Piscataway Creek area, and that runs down into the Potomac. So, so these rivers, the Anacostia is named after the Anacostan people who lived there. We had the Patuxent people who lived in this area. The Piscataway people occupied a large area of Maryland and also some part of Virginia. And the Patomac people were mostly down here on the western edge of the Potomac. But it's nice that we, our rivers still bear those names to remind us of who came first. All right, so here we are in Watkins Park. And most of the people who have been on my little excursions, either in person or in virtual land, know that this is sort of my neck of the woods. You know, I live like within, I think it's about 1.5 miles to get to Watkins Park. So I walk there typically a couple times a week, and it's one of my favorite places to spend a Saturday afternoon or a Sunday morning, or just about any time I can escape from whatever else I have that's making demands on me. So, but today I wanted to talk about a different part of it that I don't usually feature on my walks, and this is the Loop Trail. The Loop Trail is about a mile, I think it's 1.75 miles, even though I've got the wrong mile post on there. And it's a loop that goes around the more busy parts of the park, but it's a fully accessible paved trail. And because of that, it has lots of different uses. It brings lots of people into the outdoors. And one of the things that I've really enjoyed during this pandemic thing, when there's not so much to enjoy sometimes, is to see how many more people are actually making use of this trail. I mean, it really does get families out together doing active things in green space. And in my book, that's a wonderful thing. I know that I've taken you, several of you, on these other excursions to these parts that are parts of the park that are all covered in trees. But the loop has its own charms, and even though here, let me. Can you see the arrow that I'm pointing with?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. So here we go. So this loop is right through here, and it goes around the parts where, you know, here's the tennis bubble, here are the baseball fields, there's a football field here, here's the farm, here's a big playground where the you know, the Wizard of Oz playground that all the kids come to. Anyway, it's that little space. But in addition to doing this one loop trail, which is, you know, about 1.75 miles, there are all these little extensions you can do off of it into the picnic areas where there's, you know, this is where we usually have our Sierra Club picnic. That couldn't happen this year. Then you can get over here into the part near the nature center. And I think this is the part that takes you over to Mary Gordon's house, somewhere down in this area. Anyway, so there's lots of different parts of the park, and they are, there's good connectivity to all these different pieces. But today we're going to just stay on the loop. Now, why do we sometimes want to stay on the loop? Well, different people have different reasons for doing the loop, but it has a nice paved surface that's about 8 feet wide. You can social distance on there very easily, and it takes you to a lot of places. Even these areas it's mostly shady, even though you see all this developed area of the park. All of these areas are tree covered, and there's trees all over the place, and lots of nature things that come to visit you, just even while you're in this area that seems like it's the built up part of the park. I just wanted to point out one other thing about this area that from this Google map is, here's this park is about close to 900 acres. It started out as a conservation easement from the property of Seton Belt, who had a big farm, and a lot of the old tree areas are remnants of his farm. And then this area of farm fields was recently added to it, and they're talking about developing this area with building a new nature center and making some other things. But we need to kind of keep an eye on this as they develop this, because we really want to keep our trees and all this good stuff that's in here. Anyway, but this 900 acres is like an island of greenery in this sea of suburbia here. So it's one of those precious places where wild things get what they need, and we can go visit with the wild things. Okay, so part of this is an old road, and I think somebody asked where there was, whether there were dog-friendly areas. Okay, and this is a very dog-friendly park. When you come here, you'll usually see lots of people walking their dogs. And there are several places along the area where, there are little dog bag contraptions where you can put your dog poop and stuff like that. So it is very dog-friendly. Dogs must be leashed, of course. And one has to pick up after one's pet. Anyway, I had my son's dog visiting us for a while, and we went on a walk just after the rain about 2 weeks ago now. And there were all sorts of things that little Clio likes to sniff, especially squirrels. She's particularly attracted to squirrels. And sometimes we have to say, oh, well, calm down, Clio. Yes, you can't chase the squirrel. But it's nice to know that, sometimes we get all turned on about things like anhingas and things that we don't see very often. But it's also important to just help the common things stay common, what would we like in a world where the squirrels started to disappear, Anyway, some of the things I'm going to show you are things that, it's not like they're endangered species, but it's just, fun as humans to just come across them once in a while. So it's also a great place to take kids. I think at least one of the folks who was interested in unusual places to take kids. And this is a popular place, so it's not really an unusual place to take kids. But the surface for riding bikes is great for kids on wheels, and you'll see a lot of parents with their kids on training wheels, or their kids in strollers, or kids learning how to ride their bikes, and lots of scooters. But you can see how the trail behind Gabriel here. Does this look crowded to you? No, it does not. So even though I'm talking about all these different kinds of things that happen on the trails, it doesn't usually feel crowded, okay? And because there's plenty of room. And there's also, even though there's a lot of activity going on, there's plenty of things you know, when you get the little tykes out of their strollers or off of their wheels, they'll be walking along, looking at what's crawling across the sidewalk and across all kinds of, oh, what's this kind of stuff. And, you know, that's an important way of getting them to connect with wild things, just the common kinds of things that they come across. And for people who like birds, there's always birds around. We frequently will see a downy woodpecker. Occasionally the pileated woodpecker will show up. And, you know, recently it's been kind of wet, so we see pretty slugs, or even this kind of weird looking millipede thing. You know, there's all kinds of creatures out there that if you just slow down a little bit and look for them, there's plenty to wonder at. I think there are at least 5 different kinds of ferns that you walk by as you go around this trail, and all kinds of other interesting herbaceous plants along the way. And this time of year especially, you'll see a collection of butterflies flitting by. I don't know what's going on with the tiger swallowtails. There haven't been very many of those this year, but there seemed like there have been a lot more spicebush swallowtails. And but they never stay still long enough for me to take pictures of them. So depending on what time of year you go, you may see all kinds of different flowers in the spring. One of my favorites is this bloodroot. In the summer, you'll see our state flower, the black-eyed Susan. Springtime, you'll see lots of jack-in-the-pulpits. Fall, you'll see asters of various kinds. And, you know, just about always there's something blooming that's interesting to look at. This year, there's been, wait a minute. What you're supposed to be listening to, but you're not, because I don't have this, anyway, sorry about that. But the, this is supposed to show you the cicadas singing loudly in the distance, but anyway, sorry, no cicadas. One of the interesting features of this place is there's this little detour off of the main loop that just takes you into this nice little garden area. Where this has been here for a couple of years. They didn't invent it for social distancing, but it's perfect for social distancing. You can see that, you know, all of those things are plenty far enough apart, but is anybody sitting here enjoying the lovely view amongst the trees, checking out the birds in the woods? This is a great place for flickers, and woodpeckers are usually in here. Anyway, nobody's ever in there. So it's a great little place if you want a little quiet nook to just sit for a little bit and breathe the nice green air. Lots of interesting arachnids. Some little guys who might eat those arachnids. And lots of different kinds of trees. You know, we got your oaks, we got your tulip trees that are the main feature of this forest, and your hornbeam or ironwood. And at different times of the year, these things will leave beautiful things just strewn all over our pavement. And, you know, just coming across some of these beautiful things just laying there waiting for you to notice them. Or when you're looking up, you can see the fruits of other things. These are pawpaws that are made a lot of fruits this year. And in the fall, you have to be a little careful in some of the places where there are lots of pawpaws, because when they fall off the trees, if they get squished on the pavement, they get a little slippery. So you have to be careful about that. There are also a couple of artworks along the way. These things are actually carved from local trees that fell down right there. Okay, so a little mouse. Here's a snake that might eat the mouse right across the path. And one of the things that I always get a kick out of is the vines. You know, the vines are growing like crazy. I don't know if you've noticed that, but there are so many different kinds of vines that are growing on these trees. And okay, so this is a quiz. How many different kinds of vines do you see on these trees? So you can think about that for a second. Anyway, we've got this hairy vine. That's one kind. We
Are there
got the
at least
vine.
5 here?
Huh?
Are there at least 5 here?
I think there are at least 5. So there's this brownleaf greenbrier. There's this trumpet vine. There's this poison ivy. This one is Virginia creeper. You can't really see that, but that, anyway, that is a Virginia creeper over there. So I guess it's really only 4 there. But anyway, you can, almost anywhere where you go, you can stop and say, oh, let's do a little biodiversity check. Let's see how many different kinds of whatevers I can see here. Just so actually, it's a great way to spend time with your kids that are coming with you. Get them to do those little things so they can figure out, and tell them which vines you can look but don't touch, you know, stuff like that. Yeah, here's the trumpet vine. And here's a better view of that Virginia creeper, which people sometimes confuse with the poison ivy. Let me just say that there are some champion poison ivy here. Here's this is, you're looking up the trunk of this tulip tree, and there's just this tremendous hairy vine of poison ivy growing up there. And this is mostly in this, because this is edge habitat. But look at that. I mean, that thing is like as thick as my arm. But it catches, can you see how it has caught the little droplets? We were there recently just after a rain. And you wonder why this vine would be hairy. Because the reason why it's hairy is it wants to pick up moisture even from the air, rather than having to count on moisture from its root system. That in the so you have all these what they call aerial rootlets that are picking up stuff from the air before it even gets into the soil. Okay, so this is about global warming. Well, not so much about global warming, but about burning fossil fuels. This is a thing about a chemical reaction, right? And I'm just taking you back to high school when you learned about balanced equations, where, this is the equation for photosynthesis, where if you put 6 molecules of carbon dioxide along with 12 molecules of water and you got enough light in the presence of chlorophyll and other goodies, little enzymes and whatever that are in the cell, you get sugar, oxygen, and water released, okay? So those of you who remember your high school chemistry will remember that if you, as long that how much of this reaction happens depends on how much of these things you have. And also, if one of them is in short supply, that's what we call the limiting factor, right? Now, usually with photosynthesis, carbon dioxide is the limiting factor around here because, you know, it's not a desert. We have plenty of water, and in most, you know, some places there will be a limited amount of light. Sometimes, like for instance, in the thick of the summer, this light at the bottom of the forest floor is limited. Okay, so anyway, at different times, different things will be the limiting factor here. But for our vines, because usually they make their way up the tree so they get plenty of light and they live in places where there's plenty of water, the limiting factor is the carbon dioxide, which traditionally has been fairly low concentration in the atmosphere. Anyway, when you increase the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, you get more photosynthesis. So that means that vines, like our poison ivy and our English ivy and our honeysuckle and our Oriental bittersweet, they grow like crazy. And kudzu, they are growing like crazy because they have more carbon dioxide available to them. For poison ivy particularly, not only does the poison ivy grow more leaves and bigger leaves, but you'll be glad to know that it also grows more of the toxic oil in those leaves. So not only is there more poison ivy, there's also more toxic poison ivy. But you know, humans and a few apes are the only species that have a problem with poison ivy. Other species like poison ivy. It's food for birds, food for chipmunks. You can see it makes pretty flowers in the spring, and those become little green berries. Anyway, people are the ones that have problems with poison ivy. But anyway, there you go. Poison ivy. Problem gets worse when you have more carbon dioxide. But you can think of that as carbon sequestration, you know? Thank you, poison ivy. Thank you for taking that carbon out of the atmosphere. Thank you for being part of Earth's mechanism for compensating for human activity. This is a nice bunch of holly that keeps the trail having green stuff year round. But look, here's honeysuckle that's just kind of growing all over that holly. And the honeysuckle smells great, but it does tend to strangle trees. Our native honeysuckle does not strangle trees, but this Japanese honeysuckle wraps its little vine tightly around the trunks and branches and can actually cause damage. So anyway, when I go past this tree, I always worry about whether this holly is going to get choked out. And a lot of the other thing that the vines do is that they tend to shade out the native tree that they are using as infrastructure to grow toward the light. And anyway, it's an interesting dynamic there between the vines and the trees that they're growing up. All right, so here we are at one of the more built up parts of the trail. Like there's the Maryland Farm, where that's another great place to take the kids. You can, I think it's still closed at the moment, but when COVID is over, you'll be able to go there with your kids. Here's the carousel and the miniature golf, also closed. But here's a nice little feature you can use. And okay, there's never anybody using this feature. This is a cell phone charger. So, I mean, you have a bunch of nice benches around on this place, but here's a nice little convenient bench so that when you're taking your iNaturalist pictures, but your cell phone dies because you ran out of battery, well, you come on over here and plug in for a little while, and then you can go take more pictures. Okay, so once in a while we see these guys. So what do you think when you see these guys?
They're hungry.
Is it not deer or is it?
Yeah, well, they're deer, and this is like a little baby deer. These are both young deer.
I mean, they don't have the
No.
spots.
They don't have spots, right? Where is it spots?
I think this is like a yearling. It's young, but it's not a baby. So this one is probably was born, this is winter, and this one was born the previous spring and has lost his spots because it's got heavier wool, heavier fur for its winter. Anyway, there they are. You know, there's a little the deer population in this area varies. Sometimes you'll see from the loop, you might see a group of 6 of them running across and, you know, jumping in. I know people give deer a bad rep these days because of the whole Lyme disease thing, and you think, okay, where there are deer, they're going to be ticks, and you know that's true, but you don't have to worry about ticks much on the loop as long as you stay on the trail, because the ticks do not jump across the trail. They stay usually in the leaf litter or on low vegetation, and the deer are just as much victimized as people are by the ticks, so it's kind of not fair to blame them, although they do eat my hostas. But you know, anyway, they're wild things. They do what they can to make their living in between our developments. Here's something weird. I was walking along, and this is just in a there's a hole in a tree along the side of the trail. This just happened to catch my eye, and this is a leopard slug in there. And I thought, oh, weird, a leopard slug. Okay, I hardly ever see those. And I'm walking along, and like 6 feet later, here's another leopard slug sitting on one of those milepost things. Anyway, once in a while, if you keep looking, you find all kinds of just interesting, weird stuff. It's just waiting for you to notice. These are beach drops. They're little brown flowers that never do photosynthesis at all. They tap into the roots of beech trees to get their food supply from the beech tree. So they're a parasitic plant. And I mean, this is an example of how that weird little parasitic plant still is able to get what it needs right here next to the loop, where all these people are going by and using stuff on a regular basis, and these little wild things still manage to get by. Here's another weird thing I came across one day. I'm just walking along. I've been walked past this tree a gazillion times. One day I walked past there, and it's got this like pillow thing sticking out of it. What the heck? It's a mushroom just growing out of that tree. I mean, that's a dead tree, but it's like, anyway, that was one of the more impressive fungus things I've ever seen. But you know, that's only there for like a few days, and then it'll just liquefy and disappear. I came across this little garter snake once, and I was trying to decide whether to include that among my pictures today, because I didn't want anybody to be afraid of going to this place. And sometimes if you show a snake, people go, I don't want to go there and have snakes. Anyway, I've been walking this path for decades, and I think that was once that I saw a snake. So don't be afraid of the snakes. You're much more likely to see like little woolly bear caterpillars, which are totally harmless, grow into little moths.
What variety of snake was it?
It's an eastern garter snake. So this little guy is, I saw this guy last year. The amount of black is supposed to predict the severity of the winter. This guy got it right, because he's almost all orange instead of black. And the more orange you have, the milder the winter is supposed to be. And we have basically no winter right here. So this was a really smart leap here. Although people say that thing doesn't really predict the weather. This guy did. Okay, so we got some birds. You know, this bird probably thinks that he's hiding from us because he thinks we can't see him because he can't see us. But That's a song sparrow, little white-throated sparrow. These guys aren't rare, but they're lots of fun to come across. We got some cowbirds over there where they keep the cows by the farm. We got some robins. There's lots of robins that'll be hopping along or buzzing around in the trees. Usually you'll see some mourning doves. Hear them go, ooh, 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 ooh. Good time of year for butterflies. There's some buckeyes coming around these days. And this is not the greatest pictures in the world, but these are Mr. and Mrs. Eastern pondhawk dragonflies that just happen to be sitting on one of the cut stumps along the trail one day recently. And just, you know, there's just always, wherever you look, there's something interesting. So I would just like to throw that out as a place to go, especially for people with get around on wheels, whether that's your kids with the strollers or people with bikes or people with wheelchairs or anybody who doesn't like it to walk on trails that they think might have too many roots or muddy places that they might sink into. Anytime you want to go on a place that is a nice firm surface and predictable, where you're almost sure to see something interesting, even if it's just the people, just come on down to Watkins Park because it's a very nice place to visit. So I would like to, that's my little thing about Watkins Park. Let me just stop share for a moment and ask you all if anybody wants to share anything about other accessible park places where it's easy to go to when you're on wheels.
Well, I really like Tornado Alley, which is a part of the Paint Branch Trail between Cherry Hill Road and University Boulevard, near the university. And in 2001, I think it probably was a category 2 tornado. It was on the ground for a long time.
Oh, I remember that, yeah.
You remember that? Yeah. It came from the DC area and stayed on the ground, killed 2 people in College Park, and then it went across University and it took out a huge forested area on the ground in that along that trail. If anyone had been in there, they would have been killed. But it's always been a fun place to go to over the years. Now it's what, almost 20 years, and just seeing how it's regenerated back. And when I was homeschooling my kids, we used to go there all the time, especially with my son. And there's maybe about half a mile, if you park at the golf course there, and then you go on the trail towards Cherry Hill, there's some really nice wetland area with some really good birds. I always find 2 or 3 species of heron in there. There are a lot of woodpeckers on the deadfall, and especially if the water's up, there's ducks and things in there. So that's, and I've seen some other cool stuff. I've seen yellow warblers in there. We've seen buntings. That's pretty close to where you are, Lily and Janice. Anyway, that's one of my favorite places, and it's all paved. One time saw a huge snapping turtle by the side of the road.
Oh.
And beaver used to be in the pond then on the golf course that goes right by, but I haven't seen beaver in there in a while.
Yeah, one time along the loop, there was a snapping turtle that was like bigger than a dinner plate. Mm-hmm. And it was just walking along that paved path. With my son, who was about 5, I said, Daniel, no, we're going to just stay away from that little guy. Just say hello from here. Yeah.
Excuse me, I have to leave. I have a meeting at 5.
I'm sorry you have to leave.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this.
Okay, well, come again sometime.
Okay, bye-bye.
See ya.
Bye.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks, Sid. That's very good to know about Tornado Alley. You'll have to take me there sometime. That'd be fun. All right. I'm going to do one of my fall outings is going either September or October, is going to be about paved paths for that will include bike trails and stuff. So anyway, I'm going to see if I can feature some of these other, maybe you can help me feature Buck Lodge and Tornado Alley, because they're good ones. And we'll do some bike paths too. Okay, let's see, moving right along. We're going to go to, oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. Sorry, guys. I have to configure my screen share. Okay, I got you. We have to be able to hear the thing that I'm going to show you in a minute. Not from the beginning. Okay, here. All right, here we go. All right. So this next stop is the Governor Bridge Natural Area. And this place is just south of Route 50, just east of Route 301, and just west of the Patuxent River. Here's the Patuxent River here. And this area used to be a sand and gravel pit, and recently has been allowed to regenerate. So it's a very interesting, has some very interesting topography, because a lot of the, even though it may have started out kind of flat right near in the floodplain of the Patuxent River, it has these little ponds that have been dug, that used to be gravel pits. And there's a lot of variable native plants and not so native plants, all duking it out, trying to regenerate this space. So it has a lot of interesting features to it. The trail, you can walk around a little lake, you can walk through the woods, there are two places where you can walk down and look at the river. And there's interesting stream habitat through there that the trails come up against. And, you know, anyway, these trails are, you can sort of decide which pieces of them you feel like doing today and make little figures of 8 and whatever. But they, birders like to go here too. Here's a group of Sierra Club people who walked there this time last year before we even cared about social distancing. Noticed the dog was having a good time, but I kept worrying about this dog because it has long hair, and I was worried about it getting ticks. Anyway, I'm sure he got his tick check when he got home. So we have parts of this where there's ponds and cattails growing up, and this is the place where you can look out over the Patuxent River. This day there was a lot of sediment in it. Sometimes it looks much more clear, and there are actually canoeists that go up and down and kayakers that go up and down the Patuxent here. There's a water trail that goes all the way down between here and the Chesapeake, if anybody's into canoes and kayaks. And one of the coolest things there is all these like little flying things that just happen to land on the vegetation nearby, catching your eye. That's a little Zabulon skipper. And here's a bunch. This day, I couldn't believe this. Right near that place where you could see that kayaker, there was just this tree with it, and it had like 50 red admirals perched on it, these butterflies. I'd never seen so many butterflies all in one place. It was just totally amazing. Last time I was there, every time I go there, I go look at that tree to see if I'm going to see the butterflies again. But nope, that was just a one-time thing. But you know, here's a nice little yarrow plant that's just serving up this nice little congregation of little ants. They're just busily doing what they do. And wait a minute. And then, you know, sometimes you have to look past the leaves to find little gentle moths like this guy. When you get to the pond, there are all these pickerel weeds, and you can, in the summer, you'll just see so many different kinds of butterflies there. There's your tiger swallowtail. You get nice reflections of the clouds and over the water. And you have, one thing is, you know, the water areas are very just peaceful to look at, but people also fish there. They stock it. And if you have a fishing license, you can do catch and release fish there, fishing there. So that's, I often, even though when you go to this place, you hardly ever see another human, where you usually see the other humans is typically a father and a son fishing, which it just seems so idyllic, you know, a nice place. Or maybe grandpa takes the grandson out to throw the fishing line in there and see if they can find some of those largemouth bass or black crappies, or even there's some eels and stuff in there. Anyway, it's catch and release fishing, but it's nice and peaceful. There's one of our spicebush swallowtails. And oh, here I had to tell you about vines over here too. Here's another one of our evil vines. You think, oh, isn't that pretty? But that is porcelain berry. And it also tends to strangle our native plants. So if you,
Those are poison.
it's good to get the porcelain berry before it starts making berries, if you can remove it. Here's Oriental bittersweet choking this innocent little maple tree, you know, just that's what nature does sometimes. But you have, those guys really wrap around tight.
Can you text them right
And, but you know, elsewhere, you see a nice little chicory plant hosting this nice little lady beetle. And oh, yeah, they got some champion poison ivy here too. Oh, look at this one. This one is like humongous poison ivy. The poison ivy is almost as big as the maple tree. Way to go, poison ivy. Thank you for taking carbon dioxide out of our atmosphere. Here's grapevines. Those are native. And notice that the poison ivy does not wrap around the tree. Poison ivy grows straight up the tree. It doesn't want to choke that tree because it wants the tree to let it grow up to the light. Similarly, these native grapevines, they don't wrap around and choke anything because it's in their best interest to let the tree grow to carry them up to the sunlight.
Hey, I need your help.
Okay, and here's, so you can see which one's the native, nice native vine, and the mean, nasty, strangling vine right here. But look at this. I never saw this before. Moss growing on a poison ivy vine. No, that's just me. Anyway, it's just, this is a really fun place to just go. I mean, you don't have to know what everything is called or whatever. You can just see how the things are interacting with each other, using each other, sitting on each other, eating each other. Anyway, it's kind of fun. Here we have another Eastern pond hawk, another little skipper.
Hold on, wait. Let me
Little
get
deer. There aren't a lot of deer there, but that one was nice to visit with. There's some legumes, American groundnut and the partridge pea. And just, I mean, again, just almost every place you look, there's something pretty to see or some interesting interaction to just notice. So think about visiting the Governor Bridge natural area next time you want to go for a Saturday afternoon walk, because you probably will find something interesting.
That's a Governor's Bridge is a popular spot for the Audubon birders. They go, I think, every other week or something. but they're not going now, but you know, I think they do like that area.
Yeah, so that's cool. I have seen heron there, but I don't know. I guess last time we were there, I was hearing some birds, but they were all hiding pretty good. Woodpeckers and stuff. Probably if you go early in the morning, you see more birds. I'm usually there in the middle of the afternoon when nobody wants to come out and show themselves. Okay, next stop, Cheltenham Wetlands Park. This is a place that I had never heard of, even though I make it a point of trying to find these places. This is down 301. Here's 301. It's between Route 5 and Route 301. Just south of Rosaryville State Park. And it's this little wetlands park. It's connected to the Piscataway Stream Valley Park. And as I mentioned before, it's up against this Piscataway Creek, which runs into the Potomac. And when you get there, you will find these guys guarding the beginning of the path. I think these are by the same artist that does the sculptures that you saw at Watkins Park. I just think they're just lovely. And also guarding the place is we have a couple of these guys. This one was a real baby with spots. Just last time I was there, it's hard to get good pictures of these guys because they run away as soon as they see you. But it's just nice to know that they're there. This little guy was just trotted along the path, sort of in front of me by about 50 yards ahead of me. I would move a little bit ahead, try to take its picture, try to get a little closer, take a picture, and it would go away. And I would just go a little closer, it would go away. There he is, trotting along in front of me. It's nice to have a little encounter like that. Okay, so the first time I went there, it was April. This was, we had been cooped up and we decided we were going to go out to a place where there weren't going to be people. We would just drive for 20 minutes and go here, even though we felt like we were supposed to be locked in our house. But anyway, so here's what we found. These are mostly Canada geese and a few other ducks. I hope you can hear the sound. Can you hear the sound? But not just the wind, but the other sound.
Peepers. Aren't they peepers?
Okay, so that's on one side of the trail. And we're hearing this and I'm thinking, oh, I wonder if we'll see them. Okay, here's what's making that trill. These are American toads. And during late April, typically, right around the last week of April, they get together in usually temporary wetlands like this one. And they don't care about social distancing. They just do their little thing here. So it was so loud. It was like really, really loud. Sometimes you just feel like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be watching. I should let them have their privacy.
Yeah, it was X-rated.
Yeah, definitely X-rated. All right. Anyway, so interestingly enough, that same area where those toads were going at it in April, when I went there last week, it's all grassy now. And so this, that's a temporary wetland. It's only wet here for a little while in the spring. But the pond where the geese were still has water in it. Not as much as it did before. So this is over there near where the pond, where the geese were. And this is a button bush. And you can see how many different butterflies there are here. I mean, we've got our spice bush swallowtail, we got our silver spotted skipper, we got a bunch of these skippers. I can't see them well enough to see exactly what they are, but look, I didn't know there was silver spot. And anyway, look, there are a whole bunch of them there, all in that one little bush. Oh, and look, you can see here, this one I thought was a skipper, but it wasn't really. It's really an American lady. Great pic, not a super big picture because that was, like 50 yards away with my little pocket camera. But that it's fun to see all the different kinds of things that share the same infrastructure out there in the middle of the pond. And I was so busy taking pictures of the butterflies on the button bush across the way that all of a sudden there's this big whoosh of wings really close to me. I'm probably like 10 feet away. And this heron goes up. And I'm like, oh, good, take a picture of the heron, gotta take a picture. Anyway, needless to say, I only got a little tiny glimpse of the heron as it disappeared, but it was really exciting to hear that whoosh of wings, because it's like what Janice was saying about that heron that landed close to her in the water. It was so close that you could hear the wing beats. Anyway, this place has a nice collection of, when we were there in April, we had a nice collection of ephemeral spring flowers. Here's spring beauties and violets and a bunch of other kinds of bloodroot and other things that show up during April. And it's just very lush vegetation, even though in the places where it's sort of scrub vegetation, there's just a lot of it. Here's a nice alder that's growing across the path. And right across from that alder, I just happened to look over here and notice this phenomenon. Maybe you can see it. See what's going on here. And these little ants running up and down this little piece of vine. Then when you look in the stream, what's going to be going on in there? Somebody was wondering about fish. And these little guys swimming around down there. It's like anywhere you look, you'll just see stuff. But if you try to get too close with your camera, and they all run away. So, a whole bunch of different kinds of dragonflies. There were like 5 different kinds of dragonflies there. They were too far away, and I couldn't really get pictures of them. But here's a very nice baby skimmer sitting on the edge of that. There was some bright red one that I didn't know what it was. Anyway, for dragonfly aficionados, this is a great place to go. There's Mr. and Mrs. Eastern Pond Hawk again. Those are better pictures of them. Oh, and here, these guys just happen to be right close to those other butterflies. These are pearl crescents. So, and this little guy he's a little baby song sparrow, just foraging on this rocky gravel of the path, picking seeds out. And jumping up and down on his two little feet the way song sparrows do. And just, we had a nice little encounter because he was probably too young to be worried about the fact that I was there. He was only about 10, 15 feet away and let me take a bunch of pictures, even though he was just busy with his seeds, I guess. And here is a red admiral wing that I saw on the way out. And there's a trumpet vine. So anyway, this is a quirky little place. It changes a lot from season to season. But again, it's because it's sort of in a regenerating phase where there's a lot of competition between what was there then and what is trying to come back, and the edge areas between the wetlands where there's a pond and the woods. There's tons of different cool stuff to see. Oh my goodness, I didn't realize it was getting so late, but I really have to tell you about the Trail of the North Woods. If you have to get off, I totally understand. I'm sorry, I'm behind schedule, but if you have time, let's just do this one because it's pretty cool. This is in Greenbelt, okay? And Baltimore Washington Parkway here, and Greenbelt Elementary School here, Ridge Road here, Plateau Place here. Anyway, right in here, there's the entrance to this area that's called the Greenbelt Forest Preserve. It's about 200 acres worth of green space that is the last of the forest where Greenbelt was built, and the population of people in Greenbelt had been trying to fight off development of this area, various threats across the last 50 years. And finally, they thought, oh, good, it's in permanent conservation easement now. So, but some of these battles are never permanently won. Because this is being threatened by the maglev. The maglev is a high-speed train project that is being contemplated, and there's an environmental impact statement that's supposed to come out in September. And this high-speed train will run from Baltimore to Washington right along the route of the Baltimore-Washington Parkway. And even though they had originally said that the most disruptive part of this train, where the tunnel comes up above ground, would be outside of the forest preserve, the recent map shows it coming up smack in the middle of right there. Here's the forest preserve right here. And here is where the train will come up from underground, making all kinds of noise. And there will be big, they'll have to chop down most of these trees in order to do the work to make that thing.
And it comes out at the bottom. So it goes through everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, it's not good that it goes through bark either, the Beltville Agricultural Research Center.
Right, so I'm going to show you some pictures of this place just so you can get a feel for what it's like. Catherine knows this place a lot better because she goes there all the time. And let me just flip through some of these pictures to just show you what it's like, and then Catherine can tell us a little bit more about her experience with it. We were there right after a rain, and it was very wet. And pretty buggy, but such lush vegetation. And this is another one of these places where, this is not like old growth forest. These trees are, there's some nice old specimen trees there that might be 100 years old, or maybe even 150 years old, a few of them. But, it's not like they're ancient trees. but hey, if you're ever going to have a 100-year-old tree, you have to have a 50-year-old tree first, you know? So anyway, this is another one of these areas where there's there are a fair number of invasive plants in there, you know? I mean, here, that first picture I showed you, you know, look at all that English ivy. Well, evil English ivy. Okay, but, and you know, there's places, there's the Japanese barberry, and you know, anyway, there's a bunch of stuff in there that you would rather not see, but there's still a whole lot of good native plants in there. And it's just the fact that it's green and growing and a big enough piece of woods that you can actually live there if you're a wild thing is special. So it would be very sad if that place has to go. It's a nice example of how streams can erode the bank. It's just a nice peaceful place. Lots of different kinds of mosses and ferns and, oops, I went backwards, sorry. Club moss, one of my favorite things. And when we were there, maybe it was because it had just rained and everything was wet, but the fungi were just fantastic. It was like, well, this is violet tooth polypore fungus, and you know, the purple up against right next to the bright green lichen. It just a very gorgeous visual experience there. Oh, and we also came across some of these little fairy fingers, these little tiny thin filamentous fungi that reach up out of the soil and the leaf litter and they're a coral fungus. It's called fairy fingers. Anyway, there were a bunch of those there. Here's some mountain laurel trying to hold on to the bank of the creek, that canyon creek rushing through there. I don't know whether somebody planted these things. Sometimes mountain laurel will be planted specifically in places where to prevent erosion. But that little one was just hanging along the edge, but I bet you that's gorgeous during the spring. There's a nice little Indian cucumber. There's lots of good old dead stuff. You know, one of the great things about forests that are left to their own devices is they develop rotting wood, and the rotting wood provides its own ecosystem of food and interactions where all kinds of critters use the rotting wood as food and infrastructure. See how it crashed that fence? Go tree, knock it down. Okay, this is actually this trail. You can see it was a little soggy when we were there. But lots of gorgeous stuff. That's just an old pine tree that fell down. More fungi. This is, I think, false turkey tail. I don't know what this is. Catherine, do you know what that is?
Oh, that looks like an amanita.
Yeah, don't eat that one, huh? Okay, and this one just looked like a flower, but it's actually a fungus. Anyway, this is, I think this is curtain crust, heavy curtain crust, something like that. I'm not sure exactly what that is, but it sure was gorgeous. Just fun to look at with your eyes. And so when you go through there and then you come out and you see this signs like this popping up in the neighborhood around the forest, you can sort of understand why people don't want that train to be chopping down those trees. So anyway, Catherine, you want to tell us about
Well, I was just
some of your perspective on this?
I know it's already pretty late, but if I could add just a little bit more. So it is a place with pretty diverse. There is very different habitat, which makes it very interesting, close to each other. Like you could see Blueberry Hill at the top, which has completely different type of plant that the Canyon Creek that you followed. And then close to the stream on the right, there is also different plants. And it's meant to be a preserve. So the original writing about it said that they did not want to maintain the trail, or so it's you have, if you want to go visit, you have to be prepared for unmaintained trail. There is no sign, there is no, I mean, this is the only map that we have, and it's not quite enough if you are not comfortable navigating on your own. So but it's an excellent place to actually have fun exploring. So which is what we did when we moved in. We live like on the top left here. We're very close to there. So we're right on the woods. So we go there all the time. And so just be prepared for exploration, let's say. The invasives are bad along the edges of the houses. The houses have been there since 1934, then 1940. No, yes. So it's many years of things escaping from the gardens, but the center of the forest is actually very good. So it's worth doing something about it. But that's also part of the writing about the preserve, is that at this point they were told that really they didn't want anything to be done to it. It should be left on its own so it has a chance to grow old. But the invasive do their job on their own.
Who's in charge of it?
Yep.
Like if we wanted to get permission to go in and pull invasives or something, who's in charge of it?
But at the moment, it's still not allowed. So there is no, but personally, I think it's important. And actually what's interesting is maybe you see it on the left, the portion is between those two pieces of road that are dead ends. That's actually part of the GHI, the Greenbelt Home Incorporated. So that we could do whatever we want. Unfortunately, it's also the part that has the worst. But for example, that's one area where I've been doing a lot of work during the pandemic, because there we are allowed to, but the rest we're not allowed to touch it. And, invasive is always hard. There is more than we have volunteer for.
I did notice that when we were there, we came across 3 separate parties that were collecting mushrooms.
Oh, really? Well, that's interesting.
So you have some folks who go in there and forage for edibles. I don't know, do people come eat the blueberries?
I go every day. Yeah. And I go almost every day, and we rarely encounter anybody.
Oh, really? Maybe it was because it was right after the rain.
Yeah, and there is a lot of mushrooms at the moment, it's true.
Yeah. Well,
you mentioned one entrance on the west where it says Greenbelt North Woods Ecology that goes along the stream called Canyon Creek. But actually, it's not easy to park there. There is not a lot of space. So some people park at the observatory. The road at the bottom, it says Northway. It's really a paved road, but a good road. And you could park along them and get into the trail that way also.
Yeah, when I was there, I just parked over, I guess it was down here, across the street from the elementary school.
That's right. That's a good
School
place.
is closed.
Yeah.
You probably can park in the elementary school parking lot.
That's a good place to park.
Yeah. But that is a lovely place to go for a walk. I intend to go back in the winter because it has hollies and club moss that will keep the place, and some of those azalea relatives that will keep the place green, even though there's, even when most of the trees lose their leaves.
Yeah.
And in the spring, it must be lovely when the mountain laurel and the blueberries and the pinksters are blooming.
Yeah.
So
that we have.
I think that
What's interesting too is that it's really connected to the Beltsville Agricultural Research Center. So a lot of the animals have much bigger area than just our little woods. So we do see a lot of things that way.
It's a greenway. That's cool.
Yeah. And then the other advantage is that Bark actually does some deer hunting. So we don't have deer hunting, but as it often says, Bark creates kind of a vacuum. So some of our deer go in Bark. So we are not invasive. As usual, the edges are more damage, but the middle is pretty good.
Well, great. Thank you for that input. Okay, well, let me just come back to the group here. Oh, Tiana. Hi, Tiana. Did you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. My name's Tiana. I am a mom. I have an 8-year-old son. And thanks for including me. We just want to learn more about local opportunities to get out in nature and be one with creation. So thanks so much for having this.
Well,
Where do
great.
you live, Tiana?
I live in Clinton.
Okay, so I don't know when you came on to it. Did you, have you been to the Cheltenham wetland?
No, not
Park?
yet. I came on right before you started introducing Cheltenham.
Okay, good, because that's like right close to you. That should be fun. And the other place that we almost did our summer picnic this year down at Casca, which is also down in your area, but of course everything got canceled because of you know what. So anyway, we've been trying to see. I have it. I'm trying to organize more Sierra Club outings down in the southern part of the county, and anyway, so keep an eye on our calendar, okay? Because we are looking to get more events if we can ever do in-person events. At the moment, our in-person events are on hold until February, but meanwhile, we're just trying to muddle through with some of these get-togethers in a forum like this. So I hope we gave you some ideas about where you can take your kids. And the other place we talked about before you came on, if you just tuned in with the Cheltenham, was Watkins Regional Park in Largo, and that's great for kids that age. So many fun things to do. So put that on your list of places to explore.
I sure will. Thanks so much.
Okay, nice to meet you. So I guess that kind of, does anybody want to say anything else as we wrap up?
Oh, you didn't mention the skink. Or at least I didn't hear it. You showed a picture of a skink, and I've been seeing a lot of skinks around here. And we saw a skink, and my dog chased it, and it dropped its tail. And I thought my dog ate it, but my husband explained to me that skinks can drop their tails too, and that they still keep moving, you know, to keep predators.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? Right. Actually, one of the little excursions off of the loop trail at Watkins Park, right near where we usually do our summer picnic. I had my grandson there recently, and there was this little teeny skink. It was only about this long. It was climbing on one of the pieces of playground apparatus. And anyway, it's fun to teach a 2-year-old what a skink is, you know, because it was like, skink, because he couldn't say it. Anyway, it was fun. So it's just another example of, if you keep your eyes open, cool stuff appears to you. That one had such a bright blue tail. You know, those the common 5-line skinks have bright blue tails when they're young, but then when they get older, they turn out like that one that I showed you that's sort of brown and nondescript looking, sometimes with orange heads. The males have the orange heads during breeding season. So anyway, Yes, Catherine, you wanted to add
I
something?
had a question about Cheltenham. I've never been, so that's one of the places I want to visit. But since it's far away, I was wondering it might be a good idea to connect to also do the, I think it's called Rosaryville State Park or
Right,
County.
so when you go down Route 301, you come to Rosaryville first, and then another
Oh,
maybe
yeah.
3
I'm wondering
miles
what you have to
down
say.
301, there is Cheltenham. So depending on how much time you have, I
No,
mean,
no,
what
but
I,
the idea was to combine both, to do both. So what could you say about the Rosaryville Park?
it's been years since I went to Rosaryville. Actually, I did exactly what you were saying. Last time I went to Cheltenham, I said, well, I'm going to just go see what's at Rosaryville at the same time because it's kind of far and I'll just go see. But then I realized I had decided I was going to focus on Cheltenham, and I realized that it was about to rain. So I sort of skipped my Rosaryville thing. Rosaryville is big, and it's mostly forest. There isn't. It's at the headwaters, sort of the of that Piscataway Creek complex. So I think it's part of the. It's actually quite close to Cheltenham, where we were talking about, but it's much less. It's higher elevation, and it's mostly forest. There are a bunch of picnic pavilions and stuff there, and some very nice walking trails. And there's also, but one time I was there, which was probably 15 years ago now. I happened to get on the trail where there were a bunch of bike people that were going very fast, making me feel like, oh, because I had to get out of the way of the mountain bikes. But there are only, some of the trails are limited to pedestrians only. So you probably want to pay attention when you go to Rosaryville, pay attention to who else uses the trail, because they're natural surface trails, and sometimes you need to be able to,
Oh, another place we've been during the pandemic too that I have never visited is Chapman Forest, which is really, really, really nice. On the
Oh yeah, that's a great place. I was there last summer several times.
Yeah, and it's and
yeah, that has
and then the mansion where you could just, I mean, if we couldn't.
Yeah, that's right along the Potomac River. And so you can walk. You start up in the forest and walk down to the Potomac River, and then back. That's a lovely walk.
I mean, it's like being at Mount Vernon, but across the street from Mount Vernon. But the same impression of that mansion with a beautiful.
Yeah, it has a lovely old sort of plantation kind of building, if you like that sort of thing. I like the woods better. But it has they've kept that grassy area so that you get this view of the river. It's very nice. So that's on my list of places to go when we can get back to doing things in person.
Yeah. All right.
Okay. Well, great to see you all. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. And we look forward to seeing you again soon. We do have a book group thing coming up where we'll be talking about drawdown, ways to reverse global warming. And our I'm going to be doing another one like this with different kinds of trails coming up at the end of September. I don't have a definite date on that yet because I have to juggle some family things. But keep an eye on the calendar. You can go to the Prince George's Sierra Club calendar or the Maryland chapter calendar to find out about coming events. And do save October 20, no, what did we say? October 17th. Is going to be our fall membership meeting and a climate change panel. So that's October 17th, 3 to 5 p.m. All right, you guys.
Thank you so much for this. It was very nice.
Great to see you. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
See ya.
Bye.